The final season of Game of Thrones is finally upon us, and I'll be doing a review of each episode as they air. I've been watching the show since season 1 first aired, and I've since read the books and immersed myself as much as possible in the world of Westeros over the past 8 or so years. It's been a long journey, but now the end is finally in sight, so without further ado, let's go over the first episode of Game of Thrones Season 8, which was called Winterfell. So the episode begins with new opening credits that give us a more detailed look at the locations that are important to the show. Previously the opening credits had swept across Westeros because the story was that big back then, but now the scope has really narrowed and instead we get more detailed looks at places like Winterfell and King's Landing. I thought that was really cool. I also wonder if they're doing that to try and give viewers a better understanding of the layout of certain places, so we know where each character is in relation to the other when the incoming battles break out. The episode begins with a young boy struggling to get a good look at Dany and her army arriving at Winterfell. I love how this was a reference to how young Bran was climbing in season 1 to get a look at Robert's arrival at Winterfell. They even used the same music, lovely callback there. We then see Jon and Daenerys looking like an absolute power couple, but it's clear the Northerners are still on their guard. As Jon said, Northerners aren't quick to trust outsiders, and I thought this was highlighted really well when Grey Worm and Missandei arrived, and the Northerners, were kind of staring at them. There are so many cultures in Planetos, but you have to remember that a person living in the North would never have seen anyone from outside the North, let alone outside the continent of Westeros. I think this scene did a great job in showing how, though there are some powerful allies at Winterfell, that trust, as Tyrion later says, has to be earned. Dany then gets a moment to be proud as her dragons come swooping in. Obviously, everyone at Winterfell is like, holy shit. I love how Sansa looked at the dragons with a mix of awe and concern, but Arya just seems so excited. This move by Dany was a message to the Northerners that though they don't have to like her, they will respect her. We have so many major players at Winterfell, and now we as fans get to enjoy some well-earned reunions. A lot of these characters haven't seen each other for years, and Jon hasn't seen Bran since season 1, when Bran was in a coma and Jon said goodbye before he left for the Night's Watch. It was emotional to see Jon so happy to see Bran, though obviously Bran has become pretty strange since Jon last saw him. Daenerys then makes the first move to introduce herself to Sansa. She comes in very respectfully and tells Sansa how beautiful the North is, but Sansa is too savvy at this point to be taken in by that kind of talk. I love how you could see Sansa looking Dany up and down, just sizing her up. Bran then interrupts the meeting by getting straight to the point. He's like, guys, the wall's fallen, the Night's King has a dragon and he's on his way. Maybe let's cut the chatter and get on with this. We then cut to the Hall of Winterfell where plans are being made. The Umber Boy is sent to Last Hearth to retrieve the remaining men. We'll see how that goes later. And tension begins to show as Lyanna Mormont questions Jon as to why he gave up his crown and bent the knee to Dany. I think it was a fair challenge of her there, but I think Jon came back with an excellent answer. He was given a choice between being a king and helping the North, and he chose the North. Tyrion then vouches for Jon and reminds the North that he's helped bring the largest army in years to help fight the White Walkers. Sansa does make a good point of asking how the hell they're going to feed this army, especially the dragons. And as the stakes get higher, I think it could be easy to forget small details like this, so it's nice to see the show is remaining somewhat grounded with logistics like feeding an army of thousands when winter has come. There's a lot of tension in this scene between the various characters, and it's punctuated when Sansa asks what the dragons eat, and Dany replies, whatever they want. It was a cool line and all, but really, Dany, what are you going to feed them? Don't get me wrong, I like that they're showing tension between the characters, but I hope they get past it sooner rather than later. As Bran said, the dead are coming and they don't have time for dick measuring contests. I imagine they will, all be on side once the dead attack. We then see Sansa and Tyrion reunite after they last saw each other at the Purple Wedding. I liked Sansa's line about it having one upside. Sansa tells Tyrion he's a fool if he trusts Cersei to help them. This does raise questions about Tyrion and Cersei. If you remember, we didn't get to see the whole of their conversation in season 7 when Tyrion found out Cersei was pregnant, and I think there may be something up there. Does Tyrion genuinely believe Cersei, or is he up to something? I do have to wonder if Tyrion thinks Sansa was involved with Joffrey's murder. I felt like it was implied he did. Jaime told Cersei Alanna killed Joffrey, and I suppose Cersei would be quick to spread that news to support her overthrowing of Highgarden, but who knows if that news has made it up north yet. We then get to see the reunion we've been waiting for since season 1, Arya meeting Jon Snow again. They last met when they said goodbye as Jon left for the Wall and gave Arya her sword Needle. Firstly, I thought this scene was beautifully shot. I love this location of the weirwood tree. We've seen it a few times before and it always looks fantastic. I'm so glad they chose them to meet here rather than in some hall in the castle. I love how Arya jumped up to hug Jon like she did in season 1, and I liked how they geeked out over their swords together. When Jon asks Arya if she's used Needle and she's like once or twice, that was a nice nod to how much they've been through over the years. Cut down south, and Cersei is told by Qyburn that the White Walkers have breached the wall. Cersei simply replies, good. She's still a stone cold bitch who still doesn't seem to appreciate the threat of the undead. God, I love to hate her. We then see Euron aboard a ship with the Golden Company, and he goes down to speak with his captive niece Yara. Honestly, I felt this scene was really just there to remind us Euron had Yara captive. I struggle really to care much about Euron as a character. I feel like the guy that plays him is really good, but he comes across quite cartoonish as a villain, and he was introduced so late into the show that we've not had time to see him built up in the way that antagonists like Tywin Ramsay and Walder Frey were. We then get a meta moment where Cersei voices audience's disappointment with the fact the Golden Company don't have their elephants with them. I half expected someone to say, the CGI budget, the elephants. Regardless, Cersei has a strong army at her back now. Personally, I'd sacrifice the CGI elephants if it means we get to see ghosts later this season. Euron then says to Cersei that she needs to show him a bit of loving, and Cersei delivers the awesome line about buying a whore but earning a queen. Regardless, Cersei seems to like a fuckboy, so she takes him back to the bedroom. If she is indeed pregnant, then this makes sense, as it's unlikely Euron will appreciate the fact that his future queen is pregnant with someone else's child, so it's in Cersei's best interest to make him think it's his. This is hinted at later when he says he'll put a child in her. I'm still unsure as to whether Cersei really is pregnant or not, but we'll see. Bronn is then introduced in his natural element, a whorehouse. We hear the prostitutes talking about how many Lannister men have died, and I liked how this highlighted the losses the Lannisters have suffered in just one battle against Dany. I also like how Bronn seemed kind of annoyed. He's got all the money and fame he could dream of, but he's still not happy. As we see later in the scene, he's tasked with killing Jaime and Tyrion, but I wonder if Bronn is finally starting to think about fighting for more than money. Maybe he's finally found a cause worth fighting for. I certainly don't think Bronn is capable of killing either Jaime or Tyrion, and I do wonder if Cersei is testing him. We then see Theon rescue Yara from Euron's ship. I really expected this to be a trap set by Euron, but it went off without a hitch. By the way, did you spot Rob McElhenney from It's Always Sunny here? Looks like he forgot to give Theon an ocular pat down. I like how Theon finally seems to be recovering from Ramsay's cruelty, and to my mind he is no longer Reek, he is Theon Greyjoy. I love how Theon is following this righteous path of redemption even though he knows it may lead to his death. He's done terrible things, but he's probably suffered more than any other character in the show, and it's great to see him being built back up. Alfie Allen has done an amazing job playing such a complex character, and I hope he goes out in a blaze of redemption. Yes, it did feel a bit too easy for Theon to rescue Yara, but hell, there are only a few episodes left, and I'd rather they not waste any time. Yara and Theon make good their escape, and Yara says she's off to go rule the Iron Islands. Theon, though he wants to go with her, knows he still needs to atone to the Starks and decides to join their cause. You go, Theon. I love how he's struggled with his identity since season 1, but now he finally knows where he belongs. I do wonder if this is the end of Yara's story or if we'll see her again. She did pledge to Dany earlier in the show, so maybe she'll pop up later. Back in Winterfell, we see Tyrion, Davos and Varys having a chit-chat. Davos suggests Jon and Dany marry to solidify their alliance. That would be perfect were they not aunt and nephew, although that did never stop the other Targaryens. Jon and Dany decide to pet the dragons, and Dany tells Jon to ride one. Honestly, I felt a bit underwhelmed by Jon's first time riding a dragon. Don't get me wrong, it looked great, but I'd always imagined that Jon would first ride one when it swoops in and saves him or something, but this all felt a little bit tame. They have a little fly around and land by a waterfall. Dany decides she wants 6 inches of snow, even though the kids are watching. Honestly, I laughed so hard when they kissed, and it cut to Drogon being like, duh? I half expected him to be like, do that thing with your tongue, Jon Snow. Back in Winterfell, we see production of dragonglass weapons has begun. Gendry has forged the Hound an awesome dragonglass axe, very God of War. Arya and the Hound reunite, and I liked how they handled it. Neither one like each other that much, but they do respect each other. Arya learned a lot from the Hound, and I feel like they were both secretly happy to see each other alive, even if they didn't show it. Then Arya gets to see Gendry again, and I really like this scene. Sometimes I feel like Arya is shown too much to be an emotionless assassin, so I like it when she's more human. I loved how she and Gendry were kind of flirting with each other and having a nice back and forth. Arya hands Gendry a design for something she wants making, and to me it looks like a spear shaft for her Valyrian steel dagger. Looks like the head was detachable. She should really have designed a flamethrower or a pistol that shoots dragon gas bullets, but I guess she didn't think of that. The next scene shows Sansa and Jon having some tension. House Glover is reluctant to commit to Dany. Jon reminds Sansa how much he's done for the North and asks her to trust him. I hope Sansa quickly gets over the politics and realises, as Jon says, titles don't matter when the undead are coming. Next we have one of my favourite scenes of the episode where Sam is reunited with Jorah but learns that Dany killed his father and his brother. I think John Bradley did an amazing job here, and I love how he was struggling to remain respectful to Dany as he felt the loss of his brother. I generally like Dany as a ruler, but she certainly goes too far now and then, and I like that the show isn't afraid to remind us that she's far from perfect. I wonder if Sam will be able to move past this, or if it will cause problems going forward. I think Sam will definitely be more supportive of Jon as a ruler than Dany. A great scene, and I think John Bradley stole the episode here. After leaving Dany, Sam encounters Bran, who tells him he's waiting for an old friend. Who could that be? He then tells Sam he should be the one to tell Jon the truth about his heritage. I like how Bran told Sam, even though they're not related, Jon is more inclined to believe it if Sam tells him. The two have been through so much together, and there probably isn't a person alive that Jon trusts more. Down in the crypts of Winterfell, Jon is paying his respects to Ned Stark's statue. I really like how this is where Jon discovers the truth. In Season 1, Ned tells Jon that the next time they see each other, he'll tell him about his mother. Obviously, they never did get to see each other, but Ned is there in spirit when Jon learns the truth. I think this scene could have been tough to get right, but I thought it was well handled. I liked that Jon trusted Sam enough to believe he was telling the truth. He should, but he was also confused and a bit angry. You can see the emotions washing over him, especially the fact that the most honourable man in Westeros essentially lied to him his whole life, but then he realises that Ned essentially sacrificed his honour to keep Jon safe. It says a lot about Jon that he's more concerned about his family than the fact he has a claim to the Seven Kingdoms. We don't get to see Jon connect the fact that he and his new girlfriend are related, but I assume he figures that out. But obviously their relationship is kind of secret at this point, and the fact you've been bagging your aunt isn't something you'd want to shout about. Who can say how this will play out, but I think Sam makes a very interesting point when he says that Jon sacrificed his crown for his people, but will Dany do the same? We then see that Beric Dondarrion and Tormund have survived the fall of the wall and are trying to regroup at Winterfell. They enter the ruins of Last Hearth, where they encounter Dolorous Ed, who's leading the survivors of the Night's Watch. I loved the line where Ed was like, his eyes are blue, and Tormund says, my eyes have always been blue. I was really happy to see these characters had survived. We then get a scene right out of a horror film where they discover the people of Last Hearth have been mutilated and a strange symbol has been made with Ned Umber stuck in the middle. It's then revealed he's undead and we have to watch him scream as he's burned alive by Beric. Pretty dark stuff. I feel like the White Walkers are really fucking with the humans. For years they've been creating these weird symbols out of corpses. It's clear they're sending a message, but I wonder if it's just psychological warfare to shake the morale of the humans, or if they're trying to actually communicate. Also, am I the only one who thought that the symbol looked similar to the Targaryen symbol? The episode's final scene sees Jaime Lannister arriving in Winterfell. Notice how much darker his hair has become since leaving Cersei. It's like he's finally fully turned his back on his Lannister pride. This scene didn't even have any dialogue, and yet I thought Nikolai Coster-Waldau did an incredible job of conveying the emotion his character felt at seeing Bran again. It was a great mix of remorse, fear and guilt, and I can't wait to see how his arrival goes down. I get the impression that Bran really doesn't hold a grudge against Jaime for what he did, and I could even see him regarding the whole incident as necessary for his journey to become the Three-Eyed Raven. It's clear Jaime's going to have to answer for his crimes in the next episode, but I wonder if Bran may actually be on his side. I'm also not certain how many characters actually know that Jaime pushed Bran. Catelyn and Robb did, but they're both dead. I would assume they made it known what Jaime did during Robb's war against the Lannisters, but I'm not certain. Regardless, Jaime still has a lot to answer for. So there we have it, the first episode of the final season. So far I think we're off to a strong start, and I personally really liked how we were eased back into it. I have heard some people complain that it was too full of reunions, but in the episode's defence, I think those reunions have been very well earned. Some of these characters haven't shared a scene together for 8 years, so I really don't think it's fan service for them to be finally reuniting now. I'm looking forward to the next episode, and I'll be reviewing everyone this season. If you enjoyed this video, then please give it a like and let me know in the comments what you thought of it. I can talk about Game of Thrones all day. I'll see you next time. Valar Morghulis.